Howdy and welcome back to the Ineligibles podcast. I'm Will Stone. He's Chase Caldwell. He's Hayden Garland. Recapping week one, looking ahead to week two, both national and A&M related. Chase, happy 30th birthday, my man.
Thank
Happy
you.
birthday, Chase. Woo.
I'm no longer in my 20s.
Yeah. End of an era.
Dirty 30.
Glad to be here, though, on my birthday and sharing my thoughts on Aggie football. There's nothing better to do on a birthday, you know?
Yeah. Do you feel any different being 30 instead of 29?
No. Mainly because
same.
I've been telling people I was 30 for like the past 3 or 4 years. Like, I don't know. Once you hit like 25, like you kind of forget what age you are.
Yeah, I do agree with that 1,000%.
So most time people are like, "How old are you?" And I'm like 30.
Yeah.
I found myself doing that all the time. How old am I? I have to start doing math, and I'm like, okay, but is it before this year or after this? Yeah.
Yeah. Between I guess you call that mid to late, like 26 through 28, you really don't know. Like 25, that's kind of a milestone. And then with 29, like I'm always thinking like, oh, like I'm almost 30. So like I keep 29 in my head. Although I keep thinking that I am 30, even though I've still got 4 months to go. But
Yeah, right.
big week. Big week of college football. The real start of the season, the true week one. We had blowouts, we had upsets, we had buffoonery from some national programs. Just fun all around. One of the more I don't know if eventful is the right word, but I guess maybe action packed week ones that I can remember in recent memory.
Definitely. I think part of that's because we had 5 straight days of like good college football. Like even Thursday and Friday, there were a few good games in there.
Yeah.
A lot of evenly matched teams that played, a lot of nail biters out there, and then a lot of games that I thought going into it were going to be evenly matched and just absolute decimation.
Yeah.
So,
I do want to start. I completely forgot about Thursday and Friday games. I was looking at Saturday, but I want to apologize to West Virginia. They were my when I looked at the Big 12 all offseason, I'm like, there's like a whole mess of teams that could be competitive, and like it's kind of anybody can beat anybody kind of league, except for Kansas, although they can beat some teams. But West Virginia felt like to me like they were going to be ninth this year, like they were going to suck and finish next to last, maybe lose to Kansas. Just didn't seem to have it together. But JT Daniels, the former USC and former Georgia quarterback, looks healthy, looks really good. They probably should have won that game against Pitt. An unfortunate pick six there at the end when they were trying to drive to go up. And but yeah, it was that game really set the tone. Like it was back and forth, came down to like the last minute, and it was super exciting.
yeah, that was a great game. A great start to the weekend, really. I think that was the one game that I watched on Thursday.
Yeah.
Or no, I'm sorry, because in TCU and Colorado, didn't they play Thursday? Or was that
I think
Friday?
they were Friday.
Okay.
Thursday was Purdue and Penn State.
Oh, that's
If
right.
you caught any of that one.
I watched that game as well.
Yeah. Penn
Also
State
a
pulled
good
it
game.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
also
a good game.
Good game though. Yeah, what are your biggest surprises from the weekend, Will?
Honestly, and I shouldn't be surprised, and we'll see how this plays out the rest of the year, but Georgia just beating the absolute crap out of Oregon was jarring. I expected if they were going to score 49, which I didn't expect, like I figured they'd kind of plot around, without George Pickens and some of the guys they had last year. Maybe they score like 31-14, something like that. Not 49-3, and just utter end-to-end domination in that game.
Just absolutely decimated them. Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I thought that would be a I thought that would be a pretty close game, and it just wasn't. It was just um, not at all what I expected the game to be.
Yeah.
But
I think Oregon may have been beat so bad they dropped out of the AP poll.
really,
They went from 11 to okay, yeah, they're the first team receiving votes, so they're 26th. But
shoo.
yeah, it was like never even really threatened to get in the end zone. Just Bo Nix was running for his life the entire day. Just total complete beatdown. And if you thought Georgia was taking a step back, they're probably not. They're probably still going to be a playoff contender, and it's going to be tough for them to see them losing the game until they get to Atlanta.
Yeah, no doubt. For those of you watching live, it seems as if we lost Hayden for a minute. So
Yeah.
once there he is.
I'm still here. I'm not sure what's going on with my camera, so I guess just for the those of you watching this, I will spare you that, and I'll just stay on audio only for the rest of the show.
Yeah. Well, I'll just put our previous deal on for week 1 preview. Just put a little in your mind's eye. Just put a little X through preview and think that it says recap. That way,
or just block out the P and it'll say review.
We're not going to delay too much just on that. I honestly, like I said earlier, I don't even know if people even read that up at the top. So
yeah.
You get to see me and Will and hear Hayden today. So
that's how it is most shows anyways. You just kind of look at me for the most part. You don't hardly ever hear me.
Yeah. Just look at him.
Just look at it.
Yeah, so I think my biggest surprise out of the weekend, which I don't know, it's hard to look back on and say it's a surprise because I kind of had a sneaking feeling it might be like this, but Florida beating Utah. I think Florida really played up to par, and go up until about this time last week, I was like, oh, that's going to be a good game. And then this time last week, I started looking at it. I'm like, Utah is going to beat Florida down.
Yeah.
And they didn't. Florida held their own, really proved that they've got some good things moving for their team. So good win by Florida, I would say.
Yeah, it was a good win. It was a great competitive game. Utah should not feel bad about their team after that. Like they played a great game in a tough environment and came up a little bit short. On the flip side, Florida should be really happy. Like that, they just knocked off a top 10 team, in the AP poll, and that's a great accomplishment. Anthony Richardson, who's we talked about before, total freak athlete at quarterback, looked terrific. I got to see a big chunk of this game. I didn't get to see the end of it, but I did see Richardson play quite a bit for Florida's offense, and looked really good. Not just running the ball, but throwing the ball as well. Was accurate, and he did have like the 50-yard touchdown run where he just took off and just smoked everyone. It's a sight to behold. But I was monitoring the Heisman odds preseason, and I checked them again after week 1, and his odds improved from 40-1 up all the way up to 16-1. So, not saying he's going to win the Heisman, but like college football loves players like him that are, explosive runners and great passers as well, and kind of put the team on their back type players. And he's definitely that for Florida. He's awesome to watch.
Yeah. I see the excitement that Florida fans had coming into this year about him, and I thought he was a good quarterback last year, but he had a good game. We'll see if he continues that. I have confidence after watching them though, and going up against such a good opponent that Florida's got some things working, and definitely going to be monitoring them as the season goes on, because really thought that would be a relatively easy game for us, but it's kind of looking like maybe it won't be. So
maybe not so much.
Any surprises in terms of teams that you thought would be really good that came out and just laid an egg?
Ooh, that's a good question. So I'm trying to scan the list real quick here. Anybody that underperformed that I was big on. What's up, Sutton?
Hey there, Sutton.
What about Oregon? Just
Well,
getting
yeah,
stomped by Georgia.
Yeah, we hit on that quite a bit. And I should have seen that coming. Like, I'm a noted Oregon hater. Like when we did our top 15s, I was like, I'm not ranking Oregon. I'm not going to do it. Like, someone's going to have to show me why they should be ranked, and they showed us why they shouldn't be. Honestly, it's kind of the opposite. Like, a lot of teams looked impressive or looked kind of put together.
Yeah.
I thought Oklahoma had a nice showing. They played UTEP, but the transfer quarterback, Gabriel, he looked good. I'm trying to see who else. I might say Ole Miss. Ole Miss kind of messed around with Troy for most of that game. Actually, I think Ole Miss and South Carolina, they didn't really like both quarterbacks for those teams. Jackson Dart at Ole Miss and obviously Spencer Rattler at South Carolina didn't really set the world on fire, in their debuts with their new teams. Both transfer portal guys in the offseason, but we're going to find out a lot about South Carolina because they got to play Arkansas this week. But
yeah,
another team that kind of I say impressed, but I want to go shout out to Arizona Wildcats. Kevin Sumlin, not to rag on him, but just wasn't a great fit there. They were horrible when he was there. They only won one game a season ago. Their win total this year was like 2.5, and their schedule was brutal. They had to go. I think they played at San Diego State in week 1. They were a dog on the road, and they won. They won like 38-20. They won big. Like they might cash their win total here in the next few weeks. For a team that was so bad, it's good to see them kind of put things together. I think they hit the portal pretty hard too, which you have to when you're trying to rebound pretty quick. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. This might not fit the description of what I asked in terms of team that you thought would be really good and came out and kind of laid an egg, but there was some chaos in the state of North Carolina. Both NC State and UNC struggled quite a bit, and really made me nervous about Appalachian State there.
Yeah,
I know,
like a solid team.
I know y'all were both at the game, but I was sitting watching that on TV while the rain delay was going on, and it was wild, man. Just back and forth. The final few minutes of that game were just nuts, and I was hoping that they'd get that one upset out of the way, but let's hope they don't bring it to College Station next week.
Let's hope they're just like spent all their energy in that game, and now they're just demoralized having to go on the road.
Either that, or let's hope that we could figure some things out going into this week. So
that's interesting. Like in those two games, all 4 of those teams reside in the state of North Carolina. And I heard Chip Patterson, who's a North Carolina guy on the Cover 3 podcast, he was like, there's a sports bar somewhere in like Charlotte where like all those alumni were like all at the same bar, watching both of those games, and it had to be just utter madness.
Yeah, that's honestly pretty cool. I really enjoyed that storyline coming out of week 1. So that was my favorite because those 2 games I did watch a good bit of during the rain delay in Letterman's Lounge. So
I think early in our game, I was sitting by Chase, and I kind of nudged him. I was like, hey, like App State's up 21-7, like they might run the Tar Heels out of there. and then they got down big, and then the fourth quarter was just bonkers. App State is a pretty good squad. Although one caveat, I think North Carolina may have one of the worst defenses in the Power 5. That's going to be all on the shoulders of their offense going forward if they want to, get to a bowl and be competitive.
Sure. Well, let's wrap up the takeaways from week 1. I'm saving the best for last before we move into Texas A&M, but is there anything you want to touch on other than LSU?
Actually, yeah, I do want to talk about Ohio State Notre Dame.
Oh yeah.
I actually got to watch most of this, and then had it on the way home, um, outside of that one road between Caldwell and Milano. But um, it was competitive.
Yeah.
I think a lot of folks wrote Notre Dame off as they're not explosive and they can't keep up with Ohio State and this, that, and the other. And in the end, they couldn't. But they really did limit Ohio State. Like I think Smith and Jigba went down early. Fleming went down, and they couldn't really get a running game going. And it was just kind of a rock fight of a game, like very, very low scoring defensive battle. But it was entertaining, and I think both teams are pretty good. Notre Dame is, they've got some tough games on the rest of their schedule with USC and Clemson and a few others, but I think that they shouldn't be ashamed of that. Having to go into the horseshoe and come up a little bit short to one of the best teams in the country. It was a good game.
Yeah. I watched a portion of that game. I was same way. I was on the road, so I was watching it on the road, but didn't get to watch the whole amount. Any others? Because I want to touch on Florida State LSU pretty badly, but I want to make sure that we hit all the high points first.
The floor is yours.
All right. Well, how about Florida State LSU? I've got to say, watching that game made me think of Florida State versus Notre Dame last year, game 1, where Notre Dame ended up winning the game on a last-minute field goal. And I remember just being so tiffed about the whole thing because I'm like, man, Brian Kelly just gets so lucky. It's ridiculous. Like, games that they absolutely should have lost. If you watch the game from beginning to end, you would think like, man, they really got outplayed in that game. And then right at the very last second, they'll win. And then everybody just seems to forget about it, and everybody just moves on and acts like no big deal. Like Notre Dame's undefeated, and they forget that every single one of those weeks was a last second field goal. And I could not help but feel like Brian Kelly was really kicking himself that he no longer has the luck of the Irish on his side, because the ending of that game was probably one of the funniest endings I've ever seen. And I hate it for LSU fans. Like if I was an LSU fan, I would turn this podcast off right now, just because if somebody was saying that about A&M after we lost like that, I would not want to hear it. But oh my gosh,
Dude, I already couldn't stop laughing after the blocked extra point. But then you sent me that video on Twitter, and I couldn't breathe. I could not breathe. It was too much. Oh man! But like everyone but LSU fans were like, "That is the funniest way this game could have ended." They're just getting dumped on left and right.
Just absolute chaos all game long. It looks like they're going to come back and win it in just stupid fashion, in a fashion that they didn't deserve, honestly. And ended on a blocked field goal. Oh man, it couldn't be better. Couldn't be better.
Well, and like they muffed 2 punts, and set Florida State up well. And that last one, that's the game. That's the game ender. Like all Florida State has to do is just hand the ball off a few times, kick a field goal, and that's the game. But Mike Norvell, not to be outdone, he wanted to, screw the game away too. He's like, I'm gonna pitch the ball down here and fumble it, and then LSU gets it back, goes on that long drive where they're playing Florida State's in prevent defense when all it does is prevent your team from winning. And then the extra point gets blocked, and lots of callbacks to last year in that game you talked about against Notre Dame and Florida State, where he said his whole team ought to be executed.
I believe in execution.
Maybe our team ought to be executed.
Good fun. But so
Yeah,
LSU is, I guess, the only SEC team that did not win their game this week, right?
That is correct.
That is correct.
Vanderbilt, dub.
That's gotta be embarrassing.
Vanderbilt's 2-0. LSU 0-1.
Vanderbilt's the dark horse for the playoff this year, boys.
Hey,
There you go.
you heard it here first.
Yeah.
And it like all the craziness took away that like I actually did think Florida State looked pretty good.
I did too.
All things considered. Jordan Travis, quarterback, looked really good. He's been more of a runner throughout his career, but he threw the ball really well. Defense was solid. They blocked for him. It just gets lost in the ridiculousness of everything else. But I think they could be a decent team. LSU, I'm not sure if you guys saw this on Twitter yesterday, but there was a girl who's a reporter for LSU, and she was like,
"Oh my god!"
she wasn't even late. She was just 3 minutes early instead of being like a lot more early than that for his press conference. And he gave her a hard time, and he was like, "Well, maybe if you win games, I'd show up on time." It's off to a rocky start in Baton Rouge.
That it is, which I fully expected, but I did think Florida State looked good. I don't think this is enough of a game that you should say LSU is just going to be god awful this year, because
Right.
I think they manage their adversity in a lot of good ways, but definitely don't think that they're going to be a contender this year by any means.
Yeah.
Florida State, different story. Like I think with them being in the ACC, they could be really competitive in that league with this team, and so that's going to be a storyline I'm going to follow. See if Mike Norvell can do it.
Yeah, for sure. Was it? I think it's year 3 for him, but
I believe so.
So there was a game we forgot about before we get to A&M, and this also involves my quote of the week, which I didn't clip it, but I've got the tweet pulled up. I think I can share my screen. I'm going to try this because the quote is gold. Give me 1 second here to figure this thing out. But it's Arkansas. It's Sam Pittman. And say what you will about Arkansas. I hate Arkansas very, very much. But how can you hate Sam Pittman? Like, it's like he's just an old ball coach,
Yeah.
Oh, is it gonna work? Can't see your screen. Try to capture a different screen. Man, this is a great quote too. I'm gonna hate that I can't share this.
That's okay. Just read it for us.
Yeah. So after the game, Arkansas won over Cincinnati 31-24, and they're asking him after the game how he plans on celebrating. He's like, "Well, I'm not promoting it, but I like some old cold beer." But like, you just got to hear him say it. Like his, I'm assuming he's from the South, just like the way he talks. But he's like, "I'm not promoting it now, but I like some old cold beer." I'll pull it up next week. How about that? We'll do a 2-for-1 quote of the week.
There you go. Well, yeah. So, with that said, how about the Aggies?
So, let's get into it. I catch a lot of flack from some of our friends sometimes as being eternal optimist, which I'm an optimistic person, but I try to be as forthcoming and as realistic as possible when it comes to my favorite team and the reason that most people listen to this podcast. When it comes to week 1, and this applies to all teams, this applies to Georgia and Alabama and everyone else who played this week, you're never as good or as bad as you think you are in week 1. In 2014, A&M beat the brakes off South Carolina on the road after losing Johnny Manziel and Mike Evans and all those guys. And we're like, oh my gosh, we just smoked this top 10 team on the road in our first game. Kenny Trill threw for 500 yards. We're going to be so good. And we went 7-5, and we weren't good. So you just never know. And things can get better. Like position groups can improve. They can get worse. You can have injuries. All sorts of things can happen. So week one, especially for A&M, it felt like they really treated it more like a scrimmage than like, hey, we have to win this game. Because I think they knew they could probably win. No disrespect to Sam Houston, they're a great team. But it just seemed like some of the things they did, like on defense, we didn't have any blitzes or stunts or anything at all. The whole game, like it was the most vanilla defense you'll ever see, and we still shut them out. Like what they can do on that side of the ball, we might see this weekend with a good App State offense. But of course, everybody wants to talk about Haynes King. It seems very, very split. People are like, "Oh my God, King's horrible." I can't believe he threw 2 interceptions against Sam Houston. Probably throw 5 against Alabama. He stinks. It's a little ridiculous. Like we've been begging this offense to throw the ball downfield for Jimbo's entire tenure, and we finally do that, and we're like, oh, this guy stinks. Like we need to get him out of here. Put Max Johnson and put someone else in. Like, he can't get it done. So I thought King was good, not great. You can't turn the ball over like that. I think he knows that. I think Jimbo knows that. Listen to Jimbo's press conference. He's like, hey, talk to him after both picks. Both were on first down, I think. First one wasn't a bad decision. Just should have thrown it, a little bit harder, or a little bit, more vertical. And the second one, just check it down, or both. I think on both, he's like, we could have checked both down. So that's a learning moment. I don't think King's going to go out there and just throw deep every play going forward. I think he's going to learn from this and improve. It's kind of crazy to think he won't, but sorry, I know I just unloaded a lot there, but that's kind of my overall takes. I'll talk O-line in a second, but I'll let you go, Chase.
Well, I'll start by piggybacking off that last comment that you made. And it's classic, like the same thing applies to politics. If people don't like what's going on nationally, they're like, oh, get that crackpot Biden, get him out of office, or, that crazy pot Trump, get him out of office. And, how many times is the president the one that actually enacts policies? What's actually going on is in the Congress and all of that. But so same idea of, if you really don't know what you're looking at, the very first thing you're going to say is, oh, Haynes King was terrible. Was he though? Because I tend to remember every Aggie fan that I've ever talked to talking about how we can't throw any deep balls and that we have no big plays and that we really need to get the wide receiver position figured out. And let me tell you something, guys, it's figured out. Like it's there. Look at what we did this past week in terms of, passing the ball around. And what did you expect? Did you really expect that a freshman quarterback was going to go in with a bunch of freshman receivers and not throw a pick? I mean, that's just naive. But a lot of that too also comes from we had no running game whatsoever in the first half. And if you're completely one-dimensional, they're going to figure out how to pick the ball off a time or two. Even if he made some bad decisions, he's trying to force it because we got to get something going. And so at the end of the day, Haynes King is the one that after this, I'm not really that worried about. I think he played very well, all things considered. What my struggles with is the O-line, and we'll talk about that more in detail here in a minute. But let's talk. I'll do like good, bad, ugly, right?
All right.
The good of it is our defense looks absolutely as advertised. I mean, oh my God, were they incredible this week? And like you said, it's just very vanilla defense. We still pitched a shutout. We played a good team. Let me tell you something. That quarterback for Sam Houston is a stud.
He can scoot
That
now.
dude can get around like no, and that's hard on a defense, even if you're a really good defense. and he had some good runs on us and all that, but at the end of the day, like we very much impressed on defense. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
The good on the offense was by far and away the freshman wide receivers. I mean, Evan Stewart, fantastic. Chris Marshall was out there for a bit, got several good plays for him. Anaya looked great. Who else?
Yul Keith had the long
Yul
touchdown.
Keith had that long touchdown. And all these guys that we've been hearing their name and being told like, hey, they're going to be really good. They're going to be good receivers. They came out and they actually showed that on the field. That's what I've been looking for, right? The bad of it would be the run game. I mean, the run game was bad. But see, I say this every single year. I said it last week. There's always
I thought about this exact point after the game. I was like, man, Chase, like what Chase said, it happens every single year with this
It happens every single year. The number one thing that I'm most confident on going into the season is the number one question mark coming out of week one. And the number one question mark I have going into the season is the one thing that we're like, okay, we're good there. Talking about wide receivers here, right? Running backs was the one position in our entire team that I wasn't worried about, other than maybe D-line. But running backs, I'm like, we're good. So I guess where I'm at mentally in terms of what I saw from our team is that we really struggled in the run game this past week. We got to get that figured out. There's no doubt about that. But you got A-Chain as the leader of getting that figured out, right? Of course, you got O-line, which we'll talk about. But from the running back side of it, it's A-Chain. I have a lot of confidence that A-Chain is going to be able to figure that out and really get us going this next week. So I don't expect that it's going to be a whole season rebuilding situation. I think it's hey, we need to look at this, shore up a few things, and we'll have a much different – we'll get back to what we're used to in the run game, right?
Yeah.
But by far and away, and I almost said this last week, that I'm really confident about the run game, which means it's probably going to be terrible week one, and it was. So that always happens. The ugly that I'll say about this game is it was a morning game. Morning games are hard. It was muggy. It was wet. Being wet is going to lead to injuries. It's going to lead to, drop balls. It's going to lead to bad cuts. You're going to deal with that. But then we had a lightning delay, and that gets it, so even after this whole game, I don't feel like I can go back and look at the game and get a true picture of what the team is, just because, number one, we're playing vanilla against our week one opponent. So there's a lot of ugliness that's there to happen. And so that's what I'll or this will be my last point that I'll make, and then we can jump into O-line, is if you were expecting to go in and watch week one and you expected to see the game end up like Georgia or Alabama, you were going to be disappointed. There was no way around that. Do we have the talent to play with those teams? Yes. Are we a returning national champion team? No, we're not. We're a returning 8-4 team that has the talent to get there, but we've got to figure that out. We're not ready-made. We've got to get that figured out. So I don't think that us coming out and not just beating the brakes off of Sam Houston is an indication that we're not there yet. I think it's just an indication that, hey, we weren't going to come out and be perfectly ready-made. It's just not possible. We played, I think Jimbo said in his press conference, 19 true freshmen and 9 redshirt freshmen. So collectively, we played 28 freshmen. But here's what I'm excited about. All right, here's what I'm excited about. We rotated wide receivers like I've never before seen on a Jimbo team. We had deep balls like I've never before seen on a Jimbo team. Haynes King was running the ball, and he had some great runs, which gave me a lot of confidence. If we could figure that O-line situation out, which I'm confident that we can, we've got a good year ahead of us, and it's everything that we expected.
Yeah.
Not and only because we didn't fully expect a national championship winning team this year. We expected a national championship competition this year.
Yeah.
And we're there. We have that competition. We got to put those pieces together to get to where we could be that caliber of team. It's possible for this year. I'm not writing this year off by any means.
Right.
But I'm also saying that we've got some things to figure out, and the next couple weeks will really be pivotal to see how's this team going to end up.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, I mean, it's one data point, right? Like we have like football already is the ultimate small sample size sport. Like baseball plays 100 and some odd games, the NBA plays 84. College football you get 12. And you know, like with it being, you know, a bunch of 18 to 22-year-olds, it's not really predictable. But I think one thing I'll say, like you talking about the quarterback, maybe like it reminded me that I think people don't realize with the portal these days, like it affects teams like Sam too. Like they had probably 10 guys transfer in this offseason from Division I programs. The guy that had the pick, like the first pick on King, it's BJ Foster. He was at Texas for 3 years before this year, 4 years before this year. He's a fifth-year senior, former 5-star recruit. The quarterbacks from Georgia Tech, the left tackles from, you know, fifth-year guy from Houston. Like they had 6 guys on their defense that were from D1 programs. This isn't, I think Idaho State was the one I brought up last week because some bad team, UNLV smoked Idaho State. Sam Houston is not your average FCS program. They're a very, very strong team. They'd probably beat most group of 5 teams, but I don't want that to, you know, take away from or like make an excuse for why we performed not at our best. I'm just saying that for context of who we played. But yeah, it is crazy to see the drastic improvement in the receivers just right off the bat. You know, I thought they'd probably end up being pretty good by the end of the year. You know, with we love Anaya. We think Evan Stewart could be a stud right out of the gate. We've been waiting on Yule Keith to come around, and Chris Marshall, that guy wasn't even here in the spring. Missed most of fall camp. Rolls out there game 1 of his career and looks incredible. I mean, like that dude is a stud. He catches everything that gets close to him, and he's pretty dang athletic. So, and they rotated, and I think on offense, you know, people were saying after the game like Jimbo's so stubborn, he needs to hire an OC and quit running this offense. And like, how can you not like what we were trying to do on offense? Like,
I don't know.
Like Jimbo, instead of rolling out a tight end that he didn't trust, we went 4 wides. Jimbo has never gone 4 wides, maybe ever since being at A&M, and he did it routinely on Saturday. Like at one point, you know, you had Chris Marshall, Anaya Smith, and Yulke Brown on one side with Evan Stewart on the other, and King and Achane in the backfield. That is a threatening combination of skill guys. And the way they used them, like I think what I compared it to last week, a team we didn't talk about, was people look at Jimbo's offense as like in Iowa, like ground and pound, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. Iowa beat South Dakota State 7-3, but not in the way you think. They didn't score a touchdown. That was a safety, 2 safeties and a field goal because they couldn't move the ball whatsoever. Like Jimbo is a great offensive mind. He just has to have, you know, the right personnel. And, you know, as excited as we are, like the future is incredibly bright. We're still 1 year away from being a Georgia or an Alabama or an Ohio State to where you roll out there, doesn't matter who you lost. Like you expect the guys coming in are just as good and they're going to be elite right away. So I say all that to get to the offensive line, which is kind of the, you know, a microcosm of where the team is, like really talented but young. And, you know, my reason for optimism on the O-line coming into the season was you had, you know, 3 guys returning who were pretty great last year. Layden Robinson, you know, has been mocked in the first couple rounds of the NFL draft, preseason All-American type guy. and the other two were freshman All-Americans last season. And we think Ruben Fatherby could be a first-round pick, in the 2024 draft. Well, then fall camp gets here. Bryce Foster has mono, apparently, has hardly practiced, can't practice right now, or can't play. So you've got, a center who you weren't counting on, who didn't play at all last year. Your right guard, who's amazing, Layden Robinson, sprained his ankle 2 weeks ago. Not the same guy. Probably shouldn't have played, to be honest. I was kind of concerned that he did, because you can watch him play and tell right away he's not 100%. So, so then you have 3.5, 4 guys who haven't played, who are all redshirt freshmen or maybe a redshirt sophomore in Aki. And the good news is they got better in the second half. I'll say that with the lightning delay and the weather. I know you mentioned it was muggy. It was, I don't know when I felt that humid in my whole life. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not making excuses for anything, but like it was bad. It was awful to just sit in. I can't imagine trying to play in that. But
Yeah.
to have that long break and like kind of suck all the energy out of the stadium and go out there and perform better than you did in the first half, that was a plus in my book. And it wasn't, for the most part, it wasn't Sam Houston just whipping our guys physically. It was a lot of, kind of unconventional scheme on their part, and props to them. Like they executed it very well. Our guys were chasing guys and getting out of position and lunging, and it looked bad. It looked, it made the run game look horrible, and it was a positive for, right out of the gate, first drive of the second half, to, march the ball down the field, running and throwing. Much improved run blocking on that drive and get in the end zone. But, I don't think that, I think South Carolina, I think Appalachian State will be a step up in competition across the board, but it's going to be a test for the O-line. Like, UNC just scored 60 on these guys. Like, you can't go out there and not run the ball. Like, you have to be able to do that, especially with Miami coming up the following week. Their D-line's pretty good. So, all in all, I was a little disappointed to see the way they played, but it was Trey Zune's first start. It was Matthew Wycott's first start. It was Aki's fifth start, I guess. Jordan Moko had never played, in any meaningful reps, and he was getting in the game. So it takes time, Georgia lost a couple of guys on their O-line, but they still got 3 or 4 guys who are going to be high round picks, and they just plug and play. So we're not there yet. We still have some youth. I know Aggie fans hate to hear that this is a young team, but there's really not any way around it. I mean, it's just kind of the way it is. Like, we were an old team in 2020, and we were really dang good. So once this roster gets to that point, it's going to be great to watch. But for now, we just have to look for week to week improvement and see what we do.
Yeah, and I think we'll get there. I'm not concerned with the long term growth that we're going to see here. I think the next few games we're going to see improvement after improvement, because to some degree I feel as if Sam Houston also somewhat sold out to the run, especially in the first half. Because if you watch any Jimbo teams up until now, it was, if you stop the run, you're going to virtually stop the offense.
Yeah.
And I think what we showed on film this past week is it's not necessarily true anymore. We've got a lot of dudes, and we got a guy that can throw it to him, and so what? Okay, if the running game isn't working, well, then we're just going to light you up with a long touchdown pass to Yulkeith, and take the wind out of you. And so,
well, now a team like App State will see that and be like, hey, we can't let these receivers beat us. Let's play back a little bit.
Right. And then now all of a sudden you're running game opens back up, and so there's some degree of that, and maybe you saw a little bit of that in the second half and that's hard to say. That's why I said that I called that the ugly part earlier, is because was it really that we were that much better in the second half, or was it that 3 hour delay, or not 3 hour, however long delay that we had made Sam Houston kind of have a little bit of a fall off, from guys getting kind of cooled off. So that, I mean, you can't really, it's hard to say. You'll never be able to find the true answer to that, but once we have a true game under our belt that didn't have a lightning delay, didn't have crappy weather and all of that, then I think we have a better idea. So I'll say as a preview into next week, I think our real test is our real view of what to expect from this team is going to come from this week. What we see against App State, especially knowing that, hey, they almost beat North Carolina, decent team, Mac Brown coached team. If we can play them to I mean, if we beat them 31-0, I'm jumping for joy. I don't care what it looks like. I think we'll get a better idea of what our team really looks like as a whole after this week. But yeah, the problems that persist at O-line make you nervous for sure, but I don't think it's anything that we can't get figured out.
Yeah.
And it's not the first time we've come into a season with problems with O-line, and by the end of the season, we've got a great O-line. It's just it happens. They have to gel together, and so we'll continue to watch that. But,
and I think they do have the physical ability. Like, there's been some guys in the past, and I don't want to put them on blast, and I don't even know if I would say it here today if I really felt this way, but we've had guys in the past that just weren't physically capable of producing at a high level on the O-line, be it undersized or not strong enough or whatever. But that's not the case with these guys. Like, I've seen Trey Zune play high quality football. I've seen Matthew Wyckoff play pretty good football. I've seen Aki play good football. I thought Jordan Moko looked really good when he got in the game. For a day that was, kind of substandard across the board, he was kind of a bright spot. So, he may be still battling to get a starting job. And then, I think it's going to depend on when and if, I guess when you get Bryce Foster back. I've never had mono, don't know. I know it's a long-term thing sometimes. And from the sounds of it, I wouldn't expect him out there this week. Maybe Miami, maybe the week following. But it'll be good to get him back when we do. And just to have some stability. Like, he played in 12 FBS games last year, started 12 games, and like that's invaluable experience. And he's obviously very talented, so it wouldn't shock me at all if you saw a big jump from week 1 to week 2 for this A&M O-line.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and that's why I'm not jumping the gun and being like, oh my God, our O-line is terrible, because I think did they have a bad showing on Saturday? Yeah, probably. But it was week 1, and it was an 11 a.m. game against an FCS opponent week 1. And if you didn't think that this was going to be a grow-up game for a lot of guys, then you didn't understand our team ultimately. And we're not going to come off of an 8-4 season and look as polished as the reigning national champions. It just won't happen. So I don't think the season is shot by how terrible our run game was this past week. But I think that it's something that we monitor during App State to see, okay, now where are we? And I think that gives you a good look at what you're going to see when we play Miami, when we play Arkansas, Mississippi State, and Bama. I wouldn't say that's the O-line that's going to be playing Bama. I think you get a better idea of it by looking at the O-line against App State and see how we play there.
Well, and how bad were they against Arkansas last year, and then pretty good against Alabama? A much better defensive front. Just a few weeks following, and they made a big jump, and they played a lot better than they did against Arkansas. So,
No doubt.
it's not out of the realm of possibility to see improvement. I think Pierce has a good question. If I can put it up here, if Foster came back in week 3, would starting him over Wyckoff be detrimental to the cohesion of the line? It depends on where he's at, like physically, if he's physically ready to go. Because I don't think it would hurt the cohesion. He started next to Layden all last season. For 11 games. I think Layden missed a game or two, so like 10 games or so. He started next to Aki and went through fall camp with Aki all last season. And I think Aki started 4 games at left guard last season. So that cohesion should still be there, and Bryce was practicing at one point in fall camp. Like, he didn't miss the entirety of it. So he's a smart guy. He's very capable as far as like line calls and stuff like that goes. So I don't think it'd be a detriment, and you could see an improvement with his experience from last year.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think, well, I mean, I didn't count this. I started to, but go back, rewatch that game. Go rewatch the no huddle and count how many high snaps we had. And
Yeah.
I'm not putting all of our O-line's issues on Wyckoff, because it's not on him. But there was some bad snaps there, and ones that I don't think you see with Bryce Foster. And just a bad snap can throw the whole thing off.
Yeah.
That's a whole thing. It's that the adage of first impression. It's you got the ball coming to you, and that then throws off the timing, and it's all messed up. And think of a football play as if it's a video that you're streaming on YouTube, and you click play, and there's a stutter to the audio, and the audio and the mouth doesn't match up, right? That's what you get whenever you have a high snap or a bad snap to a quarterback. Is now the rest of the play is off. Ooh, sorry, that came out of nowhere. So you have to.
You're getting old, man.
Yeah, I know. It's just 30s right there. COPD, I guess. I don't know. But that's where you have to pause the video and play it again, to get it back up, and that's the thing. That's what we're looking at, is when you have the timing thrown off there, how do you fix it? And so if you're able to run those same plays without the bad snaps, I think you have a little bit better run game, a little bit better everything. All your timing is right. And so, do I think it would hurt the cohesion? No, because I think what I've seen with our O-line is that we're switching out quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I think that actually helps with the cohesion, that we have 2 guys that have game reps and can get in there and help each other out whenever another one has mono, of all things.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyhow.
I've got some stats before we move on.
Okay.
So a couple stats for the offense, and actually these are all going to be offense. But King's average depth of target on his throws, so like where the receiver is on the field when he's throwing the ball. So that average depth was 14 yards, which is like 5th highest in the country. Like, we were trying to get vertical. like it was like, and Jimbo said it all offseason, like, we are going to throw down the field this year. You're going to see it. And King can do it. Now, obviously 2 of those targets were intercepted that were, kind of down the field. So I don't think his average depth of target is going to be 14 all year. May come back down to like 10 or 11, which is kind of a sweet spot. But my other one is explosive passing play. So that's been like, if you listen to the national media and their kind of reservations about A&M, is our passing offense. Like, they've always said, ever since, actually pretty much since Jameis left and went to the NFL, every Jimbo offense has been, 80th or worse or something like that in explosive passing plays, like in the country. So I looked up, just for reference, Bama averaged like 5.2 explosive passes a game last year, which is a pass play of 20 yards or more. So Bama had about 5 a game last year. A&M had 5 exactly in this game. Pretty good place to start. Do you know how many Bama had in their game against Utah State this week?
I do not.
They had 1. Interesting, because as someone who has been a little bit down on Bama, I know they went and wrecked Utah State 52-0, but they did it in a different way. Like, I don't know if they have the guys that can take the top off, like like a Jameson Williams or Devontae Smith. They have great receivers and great backs too. Bryce ran the ball really well, surprisingly, the other day too. So they're still really good, but I'm less fearful of their offense. And I didn't mean to get on a Bama tangent, a Bama rant here, but I'm a little bit less afraid of them on offense, anyways. If they don't have guys to, those really got like the guys you just can't cover. They used to have 4 of those guys at one time. Now they may not have one. Like, they have good receivers that can move the chains but not make the home run plays. So just something to file away. I'm sure they'll have 10 explosive pass plays against Texas this weekend, but that may not be indicative of the rest of their season.
Yeah. Well, and that's where that was the biggest impression to me was those big pass plays. And I'd be curious to see, did you pull what are statistically how many we had per game last season?
I did. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It was like 2.8.
Yeah.
So it was pretty low.
Right away, I felt, and that's where you could feel that. You could feel that our passing game was better. So I knew that the stats would reflect that. But if there's one big takeaway that I have after all of this, it's that A&M has all of the threats that we talked about all offseason are legitimate threats.
Yeah.
They're I was hesitant. I've been super excited about Chris Marshall, but I wasn't about to say it. I mean, we didn't even play Moose Muhammad hardly at all, and he's a definite threat for us. So when you take Yule Keith, you take Evan Stewart, you take Chris Marshall,
and they love Noah Thomas, the other freshman.
Noah Thomas, and you see what they did, and then you pair that with Anaya, and you pair it with A-Chain in the backfield, that once we can get some cohesiveness on the O-line, and who's to say that our O-line didn't just have a bad day?
Yeah.
I mean, that really and truly, it's too small of a sample size to just say, hey, one game, our O-line looked bad. That being said, that was a big question mark for me coming into the season, and it's scary to see that, it wasn't all that great the first game, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to improve. It doesn't mean that it's even a weak point for us. I do think it is, but I could be wrong too. I think we tap the brakes a little bit and kind of wait and see what happens against App State, and then hey, if we play terrible on O-line this week and we either, heaven forbid, lose the game or have a close game, then everybody start freaking out. But don't freak out right now. I mean, of course, it's a week 1 overreaction. You always have those. Yeah.
Well, and take all those weapons you just said, plus a quarterback willing to utilize them, an O-line that may turn out to be pretty good. And what if one of these tight ends figures it out this season? That's always been the staple of Jimbo's offense. It's kind of like the X factor, they cover all your deep threats. Well, here's a first round pick at tight end that's wide open, and he's going to make a play. Max Wright banged up. Don't think he'll be back here in the next few weeks. Maybe a while on him. But I thought it was interesting that, well, first of all, it was interesting they put Crown River out there. I don't know if they'll do that again. He's when you're doing that, you're pretty much saying, "Hey, we're not going to throw it to this guy. He's just a blocker," which
Yeah.
Alabama's done that in the past. I don't want to. I could go on a 10-minute rant about this, but when they had their best offense ever in 2020, they utilized like a sixth lineman a lot. He was a quote unquote tight end, but he was just an extra tackle who was in there to protect, and have better protection. But
I think us doing that was partly to try and get our run game going, though.
probably. I thought Donovan Green blocked well when he was out there. I don't think he caught a pass, but he's definitely, of the freshmen, he has the best reputation for blocking, maybe the most aggressive. So maybe that's what got him the playing time. It wouldn't shock me at all if that was the case. So
Could be. Yeah.
if there's always going to be a tight end in the offense, it may not be until maybe it's game 4 or 5 when one of them breaks out, but something to keep an eye on for sure.
Definitely. Well,
also want to point out that Anaya Smith had, he's had some awesome games for us. That was probably his best game in an A&M uniform.
one of them for sure.
Just played outstanding, and I think he's my favorite player of the Jimbo era, and maybe going back to Mike Evans and Johnny, but dude loves A&M. Dude loves ball. Just goes out there and plays his tail off, and you love to see it.
Yeah, you do. I'm glad he's on our team.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's cap this doubleheader of an episode off with going into games and predictions, I guess, for this coming week. I think we've kind of told you what we think about the A&M team, and so you can glean what our expectations are of App State. We've got a good team coming into Kyle Field.
Yeah.
They almost beat North Carolina. They're nothing to shake a stick at. They're a good team. So,
I think I said a few weeks back a point about their own line. They bring back 4 of the 5 guys they had last year, and they're all like 5th-year senior types, or 6th year even, maybe some of them, but a very, very old and veteran group of O-linemen. Chase Bryce is the quarterback. If you've heard that name before, he used to be at Clemson. In fact, in Trevor Lawrence's first season there, after Trevor won the job, Kelly Bryant sat out the rest of the year, and then Trevor went down in a game against Duke, and they almost lost. And Chase Bryce saved the day. So he played really well last week. Like I said, they got a good O-line. They've got a veteran quarterback. They have some nice weapons. Obviously, defense gave up a ton of yards and points. So don't know what to expect there, but I'm sure they got some decent players on that side of the ball. But not a bad football team whatsoever. Probably the favorite to win the Sun Belt this year.
Yeah, it's not going to be an easy game to win necessarily, but I do think that we have the tools to do it. My expectations, I expect for our run game to be a lot better this week than it was last. It's pretty easy to improve on that based on what we saw, but I think that's why I'm tempering expectations for people and saying tap the brakes. Don't sky isn't falling yet. Give it another week. Let's see what it looks like, because I think we make some adjustments this week and really focus on that, because I think the focus for 4 years has been let's get this wide receiver core going.
Yeah.
And that's happened. So then now we need to shift our focus back to being a more balanced offense. But
100%.
Just seeing how their defense was against North Carolina, who was without Josh Downs, gives me a lot of confidence that we're going to be perfectly okay on the offensive side of the ball this week.
Yeah.
And seeing what our defense did last week, I think we're going to be perfectly okay on the defensive side of the ball. So I think you have a much more exciting game this week, and one that you feel a lot better coming out of going into Miami.
I could totally see us I'm not expecting this. I'm just saying this is one scenario. I could totally see A&M going out there and just like crushing App State, like 49-3 kind of game.
Yeah.
And then our entire fan base will overcorrect and be like, "Oh my God, we're gonna go to the playoff!" like
Yeah. Oh,
Haynes King
no,
for
no.
Heisman.
If there's one thing I know about Aggies, it's that we absolutely will do that. So it's gonna be a good week though. I'm looking forward to the game.
Yeah.
Will be a good game. But there's a couple other good games that'll be played this week. So let's look at that. Some of our rivals are playing. Some South Carolina versus Arkansas, two of our most bitter rivals, play this week. And
Man, who do you want to root for in this one? Like, I hate them both so much.
Yeah, I hope it's a tie. Honestly, I hope somehow they both lose. You know,
Yeah.
that's what we say. So, you know, of course, everybody knows South Carolina is our number one rival of all time. It's always been that way. And they're playing our other like kind of rival, which is Arkansas. So that ought to be a good game. But I expect Arkansas to roll there. Not really rivals of ours, but Texas is playing Alabama this week. Neither team, two teams that we don't really care about as Aggies. I don't feel like, but you know.
Yeah, I mean, we only play one of these teams, whereas in Arkansas and South Carolina, we play them both. So
that's a good point.
You have to consider that. Also, we also just get all the recruits that Bama wants now, so that's much less of a rivalry than maybe it used to be.
Sure.
But I've got a serious point on this. Some people, even some A&M people, believe that this game's going to be close because, hey, I will say this: it'll probably be a great environment. Texas can actually get up for games like this. You know, you go back to the LSU game a few years back. Even though that was at night, this is at 11 a.m. But a lot of people think it's going to be a close game. Like Texas is just going to go all out, you know, sell out. They've been prepping for months. They're going to keep it within, you know, a couple scores. No, it's not going to happen. I'm telling you right now, Texas will struggle to score any points in this game. I'm telling you right now, they cannot block the guys that Alabama has on defense. They damn sure can't run the ball. So Bijan's a great back. He's a fantastic running back. You can't run when there's nowhere to run. Like when your offensive line can't make holes, like it's bad. And like there's that, and then there's Texas's defense against Bama's offense. And the line's 20. I would bet it up to like 27.5 on Bama. Like I just do not see a way unless Bryce just throws 5 interceptions. I don't see how this is a close game at all.
I tend to agree with you. I don't think Texas really has a legitimate shot of winning this game, but I do think it'll be a little bit closer than 4 scores. I think 20 is probably an accurate line, just because Texas does have a way of playing up to their competition. And I do think that they've been really prepping for this game. And they had a good week last week. You know, they had a much better week than we did. So, you know, it's there. If you're a Texas fan, there's reason for optimism here. But ultimately, I don't see them pulling the upset here. I just can't. Maybe if it was later in the season, maybe. But Bama's just too polished coming off of last year that I think Texas will struggle here, and I don't expect the upset there. But that's my insight on it, at least.
Yeah.
What about Tennessee Pitt?
Tennessee Pitt, last year's worst game of the year, this year's best game of the year. You know, Tennessee was really impressive in their opening game last week. I think it was like 55-3 or something absurd like that. Pitt is a good team. They're a solidly, you know, top 20-ish team in the country, but Tennessee could be really good. They'll go as far as their defense takes them, but I like Tennessee in this one.
Yeah, I do too. But I think it may very well be the game of the week. either that or Kentucky, Florida. But actually, I take that back. Kentucky, Florida is going to be the game of the week. But it will be a good matchup between two good teams, legitimately good teams. Tennessee's got some things moving for them, and I like Tennessee in this one.
Yep. How about Wake Forest going on the road to Vanderbilt?
Very curious to see how that one goes because Wake was good last year. I did not watch their game this past week, so I don't know what they look like this year. But
Yeah.
it is the return of their quarterback, right?
Yeah, Sam Hartman. I don't know how
Hartman.
old he's been there for. I feel like he's been there for a long time. He may be a senior by now, but had a great year last year. Had something wrong. They really didn't say what, like a non-football related health thing. But he's back. He'll be back this week for the first time this season. Vanderbilt's looked good. They're a competent team. They're not super talented, and I don't know if Wake Forest is either. But if Hartman wasn't playing, it'd be a lot more interesting. But he may go out there and light it up.
Yeah. Well, and I like Vanderbilt's potential here of maybe getting a top 25 win, and I think it's very possible
SEC,
for them
baby.
to do. So this will be a real test for Vanderbilt. I think they've looked good the past 2 weeks. They have the tools to do it, but this is the true test, I would say. And so,
I'm still struggling to come up with a team that I thought was worse than I expected last week. But another team that I thought was impressive was Texas Tech. They played a crap team. They played Murray State, but they crushed them. They actually started Tyler Shuck at quarterback, who started for them last year, and then he got hurt. Got hurt again in this game. So they inserted Donovan Smith, who played last year and was pretty good. He at least this game is at Lubbock, or it's in Lubbock. I thought it was on the road for them. But they're hosting Houston, who's a top 25 team. They're 25 exactly, to be exact. Houston's good, but I think between Smith, these receivers, a shout out to former A&M player Tyree Wilson, who looks like a grown ass man at Texas Tech. Like, he was always like this, this tall, like long armed dude that needed to fill out. He's been eating his Wheaties up in Lubbock, and looks like a real player. So I think Tech is like barely favored in this one, but should be a good game.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that game for sure. I like Tech. I like what they're doing, and I think they're heading in the right direction. So this will be a good test for them as well because Houston's a decent team. So
yeah,
Kentucky, Florida. I'm very excited about this game. I mentioned earlier that Florida looked a lot better than I expected them to. But if Florida, if the way that they played last week, which is how I mean, they played a legitimate opponent in Utah and they beat them. So I don't think that there's any reason to believe that Florida's not legitimate, this year.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, which I think it is, this is going to be a really, really pivotal. Why do I keep saying that? Pivotal game for the SEC East. So looking forward to that game for sure.
Yeah, and I know Kentucky's still without their starting running back, Chris Rodriguez. So that's gonna be difficult. But and this game is in the Swamp too. I think if it was at Kentucky, I'd feel a little bit better about Kentucky. But we'll see about Florida. It's still probably a fairly young team with brand new coach, brand new coordinators, coming off this big emotional win. Can you maintain that? Can you come back the next week, focus in, and beat another quality opponent? Wouldn't shock me to see them lose. I think they'll pull it out, but Kentucky, definitely not a team you want to mess with.
Yeah, not a pushover game by any stretch of the imagination, but I do like Florida in this one, mainly because it is at the Swamp. So last game I'm mostly looking forward to this week is going to be Baylor BYU. Two teams that I'm pretty high on. Definitely high on Baylor, but I like BYU this year too. So really excited to see this game, and I think it'll be a good nightcap to a good week of college football.
I love having a good game this late. It's
Me
usually
too.
it's usually Hawaii and someone crazy, or someone in the
Yeah,
Pac-12, and like it's like Cal versus Oregon State, and
sure.
like that's fine, but this is top 25 matchup, like
Yeah,
uh and it's in Provo. BYU is actually a slight favorite, which kind of surprised me. Um, but I think both teams have really really good quarterbacks. I like Jaron Hall at BYU. I like Blake Shapen at Baylor. Um, Baylor's passing game wasn't great until he kind of got in the game late last season. So could be a shootout. Could be a very exciting game to watch. And could lay the groundwork for some interesting storylines. If BYU wins, you know, they might have a path to go, 11-1, or,
yeah, no doubt.
or even better or something like that. But if Baylor wins, it's a notch in their belt, and they're still one of the favorites in the Big 12. But love that game being late. It's going to have all eyes on it, and I'm excited to watch it.
Yeah,
A couple of interesting games. I think Arizona State at Oklahoma State, and then where's it? Mississippi State. Mississippi State's playing Arizona. I don't know where that game is. Either way, like both the Arizona schools are fascinating to me. One, because Arizona was supposed to suck. That may be okay. Arizona State is basically just is going to fire their coach at any point, and there's some interesting storylines there. But I do want to get back to the Big 12 because I saw this on Twitter earlier today, and every week in week 2 is Iowa State and Iowa, and they call it some call it El Asico instead of El Clasico. This is the 69th meeting between these two teams, and
nice.
Matt Campbell he's a great coach for Iowa State. Has yet to beat Iowa, and it's in Iowa City. It's at Iowa. Iowa State may have a better quarterback now than they've had in the past 4 years when they had, what was his name? Brock Purdy.
Mhm.
Brock Purdy was a good player. They have a really good quarterback now who may take them to a new level on offense. And speaking of offense, Iowa doesn't have one. So definitely interested to see how that plays out. I'm telling you, man, like big picture wise, like the Big 12 is going to be a like all out brawl this year between all those teams. Even Kansas has improved. Like they're
Yeah.
not the doormat that they've been. So any team can beat any of the other ones on any given Saturday. So if you're scrolling through and you see a Big 12 team on and there's nothing else on, just watch that. Like it's
Yeah.
it's gonna be a good game.
Well, you'll probably have to get some additional, TV package to be able to see it, but still watch it
Yeah.
if you can, or bootleg
Yeah.
it on YouTube, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good preview for week 2. We've got some good games upcoming. USC Stanford we didn't mention, but I think that'll be a good game to watch. So I like that. It seems like this year, and maybe it's always like this, and I'm just recent memory bias, right? But it seems like this year we've got a lot of good games in week 1, week 2, week 3. That normally it's been kind of, just a bunch of good teams playing crappy teams,
Yeah.
and we're not really seeing that this year. So I'm
Yeah.
excited about that. But I think we'll have a lot more detail next week to break down A&M and to break down other teams in both the SEC and across the nation. So definitely tune in on Monday and get our thoughts on what happens this Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, like we say it every year, or we say it every week. But there's going to be a team lose this weekend that we don't expect, and there's a lot of good teams, maybe not ranked versus ranked, but like ranked versus pretty good. And it's still early. We're still trying to figure out our our analysis, like who's actually good, who's a pretender. Another week of games, and more data and more takeaways to have. And we look forward to watching that this weekend, and we'll catch you guys on Monday. Happy birthday, Chase.
Thank you.